Okay, so this story is called Soul Cage. It's an Irish folk tale. Now, just like all the other stories that I've told before, I'm going to add little bits and pieces and change things just to make the story even better. In Ireland, there was a boy named Jack. Now, he lived with his dad and his grandpa. And one thing that he loved about his dad and his grandpa was that they would tell him stories about when they saw mermaids, beautiful mermaids on the beach. And he wanted to see a mermaid so bad for himself. Well, many years later, he grew up and got married, and he was walking along the beach. And on that particular day, it was really windy. There was a storm coming in, so it was kind of gray and hazy and kind of hard to see things. But in the distance, sitting on a rock that was right next to the ocean, he looked really closely and realized there was something on top of it. And as he tried to, squint his eyes and see what it was, he realized that whatever this thing was, it had the upper body of a man and the lower body of a fish. And this is when he realized he was seeing a merman. Before he could go up and get a closer look, it dove into the water and never came back up. Well, Jack figured that that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and he would never see the merman again. But another day when he was walking by, again it was windy, and just like the last time, the merman was on the rock and dove back into the water. And over time, he started to realize that anytime it was really windy, that this merman would be there on the rock. And so he got into the habit of anytime it got really windy, he would go out really quick and see if he could get a better look this time. Well, one day it was really windy, but this time it was raining, like just pouring, super wet water everywhere, and there was lightning outside. It was really dangerous. But he really wanted to see if he could get a closer look at this merman, right? So he goes out, onto the beach, and it's raining, and he's trying to see through the rain, and the wind is blowing, and lightning just cracks right next to him, and he realizes just how dangerous it is. So he runs to the rock where that merman was normally on, right? And he goes right next to the rock, and there was this cave right next to it, and he goes inside of the cave to hide from the rainstorm. Well, Jack got into the cave, and he was finally safe. And outside, because the lightning was flashing, every now and then, it would illuminate the inside of the cave. And while it was flashing, he realized he wasn't the only one in there. In the corner of the cave, the merman was sitting there. Now, when we think of mermen, we think that, they look like a handsome man with a fishtail, right? But in all reality, mermen have green hair, green teeth. They have little fins right here instead of arms. They have legs and a giant fishtail in the back. So they don't really look like what we think they do. And so he sees the merman, and it kind of scares him, and the merman's kind of scared too. And then they're trying to break the tension because he can't leave the cave, and he's like, "How's it going?" And the merman goes, "I guess I'm okay." And then Jack, trying to think of something to say so that it wasn't awkward, he said, "It's raining pretty hard, don't you think?" And the merman said, Yeah, it's raining pretty good out there." And then Jack, still trying to think of something, said, "You know what I wish I had?" And the merman went, "What?" "I wish I had some alcohol right now." Man, I wish I had whiskey, actually. And the merman went, "No way. I love whiskey." And he's like, "You like whiskey?" "Oh, man, well, let me tell you, I can drink so much whiskey and I'm still able to walk back home from church. It's pretty impressive." And then the merman's like, "Well, do you think you're cool? Well, guess what? I can drink so much whiskey that I can, find a sunken ship, get drunk, and then swim all the way back to my house, and I don't even get lost." And so they're bragging about who can drink more whiskey, And so they have a lot in common there. And then, Jack, he looks next to the merman, and he realizes that there's some bottles there. And he's like, "Are those bottles yours?" And the merman goes, "Yeah, I like to collect them." And Jack's like, "No way. I like to collect bottles. I pick them up on the shore. Every time there's a storm, a bunch of bottles get, washed in." And the merman's like, "That's why I go to the beach." And so now they're obviously best friends, and they like to talk, and they have a huge conversation, and they forget, how much time goes by because they just enjoy being with each other so much. Well, after hours of talking, Jack finally noticed that the rain had stopped. And not only had the rain stopped, he could see stars outside. It was already nighttime, and he realized he needed to go home. And so he said, "Wow, well, I gotta go, but what was your name?" And the merman says, "Kumara." He's like, "Well, that's a cool name. My name's Jack." You know what we need to do? We should get something, we should go out and get drinks sometime. What do you think? And Kumara said, yeah, that sounds good. How about this? Let's meet at this cave next week and we'll get something to drink. And Jack's like, sounds good. I'll see you next week. Now, the story doesn't end here. Next time, I'll tell you what happened when they met up and went to get drinks together.